My girlfriend abandoned her nephew on my doorstep and went on a girls' trip without telling me. So I called her sister and child services and ended the relationship for good. I'm a 31-year-old guy. For the past year, I've been dating my girlfriend, someone I initially saw as caring and supportive. We met through mutual friends. She was charming, fun, and easy to talk to. We started hanging out more and eventually made it official. For a while, things felt comfortable. But looking back, I realized I ignored some big warning signs, specifically how she talked about her family. She'd occasionally mention her sister's struggles, referencing how her nephew often ended up passed around between relatives who didn't want the added responsibility. Whenever I asked more, she'd shrug it off, saying, "It's not my problem. I'm too busy for that." Her attitude struck me as cold, but I figured it was just her family dynamic. I never pushed the issue further. One Friday, about 2 months ago, I came home from work exhausted. My plan was to sink into the couch, order some takeout, and maybe watch a game or two on TV. As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted a little boy sitting on my front steps, his small backpack beside him. He looked about 6 or 7, blinking in confusion. My heart hammered. I parked, hopped out, and asked gently, "Hey, kiddo, are you lost?" He answered, "My aunt dropped me off." At first, I didn't know how to react. Then I noticed a hastily scrawled note in his hand with my address on it. Recognizing my girlfriend's handwriting, I felt a jolt of disbelief. I asked, "Did my girlfriend bring you here?" And he nodded. The note read something about him needing a place to stay for the weekend, and that she'd explain later. No courtesy text, just her nephew on my doorstep. I guided him inside, gave him a glass of water, and asked if he was okay. He shrugged, saying he was hungry. I rustled up a quick sandwich and some fruit, trying to stay calm. My phone hadn't rung or vibrated all afternoon, so I checked for messages. Nothing from my girlfriend. Shock turned to anger. Who abandons a child at someone's house without any warning? I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. I tried again, still no answer. Then I texted her, "Why is your nephew here? Are you coming back soon?" No response. I was left with a confused kid who had no clue why his aunt vanished. I asked him if he knew where she went. He shrugged, saying she mentioned a girls' trip with friends. That's when it dawned on me. She decided to dump her nephew on me so she could jet off to wherever without telling me a word. Unsure of what to do, I rummaged through the boy's backpack. Inside was a small tablet, a t-shirt, underwear, and a few crayons, hardly enough for a full weekend, let alone who knew how long. I asked him about his parents. He said he lived with his mother, my girlfriend's sister, but apparently the sister was out of town for work. My girlfriend had volunteered, or so he believed, to watch him. Then she dropped him at my place. I felt the immediate urge to contact someone. My first thought was to call the sister, but I didn't have her number. All I had was my girlfriend's. Next, I considered calling my girlfriend's mother, but I'd never spoken to her either. Anxiety spiked. A child's well-being was at stake, and I had no real authority or plan. I sure wasn't prepared to babysit for days without warning. Still in disbelief, I tried calling my girlfriend one more time. Straight to voicemail again. My next step was to call a mutual friend to see if anyone knew the sister's number or had any clue where my girlfriend was. The friend sounded baffled, saying she left with a group of girls to some beach resort. She was bragging about it all week. Are you telling me she just left her nephew behind? I felt a rush of anger so strong, I had to take a deep breath to avoid cursing. The boy glanced at me, sensing the tension. I calmed myself enough to say, "Hey, don't worry. I'll figure this out." He nodded, looking slightly relieved. Inside, I was already formulating a plan. Find the sister's contact info, inform her, and if needed, involve authorities. Because leaving a child at someone's doorstep without permission or notice felt like neglect. And if my girlfriend thought I'd just roll over and accept that, she had another thing coming. Once I fed the kid dinner and made sure he had a place to sleep on my couch, I started making phone calls. My friend managed to track down the sister's number through social media. Around 8 in the evening, I finally got through to her. She was in absolute shock when she heard what happened. She explained she'd asked my girlfriend if she could watch her son for a few days while she attended a mandatory work conference. My girlfriend had agreed, apparently with some enthusiasm, but never hinted that she'd be passing the child off to me. The sister apologized profusely. She sounded near tears, saying she couldn't leave her conference early and that she thought everything was handled. She gave me details. She'd be back in 2 days, and normally she'd leave her son with a trusted family member, but my girlfriend insisted on helping this time. I told her I'd keep the boy safe for now. She thanked me and promised to sort this out as soon as she returned. Now at least I had clarity, but it didn't fix the situation in the moment. I was still stuck with a child I barely knew and no sign of my girlfriend. My temper flared again. How could she think this was acceptable? If she had asked me in advance, I might have been willing to help. But sneaking off for a girls' trip and dumping a kid at my door was downright deceitful. By day's end, I set up some blankets on my couch for the nephew. He was surprisingly easygoing, more bored than distressed. I tried to keep him entertained with a board game and some cartoons, but in the back of my mind, I was seething. I texted my girlfriend a final message. I spoke to your sister. She told me everything. Call me ASAP or we're done. I doubted it would get through, but I needed to state my boundary. The night was restless. I kept checking my phone, half hoping she'd appear or at least text some explanation. But nothing came. In the morning, I woke up to find the boy rummaging for cereal, asking if we could watch more cartoons. I plastered a reassuring smile and tried not to let my annoyance show. It wasn't his fault. He was just caught in the middle of my girlfriend's irresponsible decision. Mid-morning, I got a short text from her. Busy with my friends. Relax. He's fine with you. My blood boiled. That was all she had to say. No apology, no plan, just a dismissive he's fine. I replied, this is unacceptable. Come get him now, or tell me where you are. She didn't respond. I fought the urge to call her 100 times, but realized it was pointless. Her phone likely stayed on silent while she was partying. A knot grew in my stomach. I felt compelled to ensure the boy's well-being beyond just feeding him and keeping him entertained. If my girlfriend completely vanished, would the sister get back in time? What if something happened? I thought about calling child services preemptively, but decided to hold off until I saw how the next day played out. Meanwhile, I did my best to keep the boy comfortable. We played a few rounds of a simple card game, walked to a nearby park, and grabbed some takeout for lunch. He seemed happy enough, talking about how he rarely got to have guys' time. The innocence in his voice made me realize how selfish my girlfriend's stunt was. She was messing with a kid's sense of stability and trust. That afternoon, a neighbor stopped by to drop off a package that had been delivered to them by mistake. They noticed the boy and asked if he was my kid. I explained it was my girlfriend's nephew, short-term babysitting. The neighbor shrugged and joked, "You're quite the caretaker, huh?" I must have forced a smile, but inside I was fuming. I never volunteered for this. By the end of the second day, still no sign of her. She sent a photo to our group chat of her and her girlfriend sipping cocktails at a beach, caption, "Living my best life." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Anger turned to something deeper, disappointment. This was the person I've been sharing so much time with, someone I thought was supportive. Now I saw a glimpse of her true colors, carefree, dismissive, and entitled enough to believe I just shouldered her responsibilities without complaint. I texted again, saying if she didn't come back by that night, I'd have no choice but to call the authorities. Her answer was a single laughing emoji. That was the tipping point. I called the sister and told her I was going to contact child services if my girlfriend didn't show up soon. The sister practically begged me to wait one more day, promising she'd fly home early if necessary. Then, without warning, my girlfriend's line went dead. No more messages, no more calls. By the third morning, I'd reached my limit. My girlfriend's nephew was still with me. He'd slept all right, but I could tell he missed his mom. He kept asking when she'd pick him up. I told him she'd come soon. Meanwhile, I phoned the sister again. She said she'd managed to switch her flight and would arrive that evening, sounding desperate to fix this. She apologized over and over, admitting her trust in my girlfriend had been a grave mistake. I reassured her the boy was fine, just confused. My girlfriend, on the other hand, had posted another social media update about her epic girls' trip, tagging a fancy resort in another state. I was stunned. She couldn't even pretend to show a shred of responsibility. The final straw came when she uploaded a short video story, laughing with her friends at a poolside bar, music blaring in the background. There I was, basically playing guardian to her nephew, and she didn't care. That same morning, I decided enough was enough. If she wouldn't respond, and the sister was still hours away, I had to act. I made a quick call to Child Protective Services to explain the situation. I told them I had a child in my care who wasn't legally my responsibility, abandoned by his aunt. They took my information, asked about the child's condition, and confirmed they'd open a file. They advised me to keep the child safe until a legal guardian arrived or until they could coordinate with local law enforcement if needed. I felt a twinge of guilt making that call, but what else could I do? He wasn't my kid. If something happened, I'd be on the hook. On top of that, my girlfriend's total lack of concern warranted legal attention. The child services rep thanked me for being proactive. They also told me if at any point I felt overwhelmed or unsafe, I should contact them again or call the police. I hung up feeling both relieved and anxious. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Finally, a call from my girlfriend. I picked up, steeling myself for a confrontation. She greeted me with a casual, "Hey babe, I heard you're freaking out. What's the big deal?" My hands tightened on the phone. The big deal. I repeated, "You abandoned your nephew at my house without asking, and you've been off partying. That's the big deal." She let out an exasperated sigh, dismissing it as an overreaction. "He's a child, not a bomb. You can handle him for a few days, can't you?" I could hardly believe her words. My voice shook with anger as I told her I'd already called child services, that her sister was flying home early, and that I expected her to come pick him up immediately. Her response was a shrill laugh. "What is wrong with you?" she snapped. "I left him with someone responsible. You should be flattered I trusted you." That twisted logic nearly made me hang up then and there. Instead, I said, "Don't bother coming back here. We're done." She paused, disbelief evident in her silence. Then she launched into a tirade. "You can't break up with me for this." I needed a break. Everyone does it sometimes. Stop being dramatic. My frustration reached the boiling point. I told her if she didn't show up soon, there would be a legal record of child abandonment. I gave her the address where her nephew was staying, my address, and told her if she wanted to avoid more trouble, she needed to handle the situation. She ended the call with a string of insults, calling me ungrateful and short-sighted. Moments later, I got a text from her friend's phone, cursing me out for ruining their vacation. I blocked both numbers. I was done letting them push me around while I took care of a child they'd abandoned. By late afternoon, the sister's flight landed. She Ubered straight to my place. Relief washed over me when I saw her. She hugged her son tightly, apologizing for all the confusion. I explained everything, from the moment I found him on my doorstep to the calls I'd made. She thanked me profusely, tears in her eyes, promising to repay me however she could. I told her no payment was necessary, but that I'd already contacted child services. She understood, saying it might be for the best, given her sister's behavior. We sat together for a few minutes, the boy munching on snacks while we discussed the next steps. The sister intended to file a formal complaint about my girlfriend's conduct, highlighting her total irresponsibility in this scenario. I said I'd cooperate fully, providing any evidence or statements they needed. Because, as far as I was concerned, she had to face the consequences of her choice. That same evening, as the sister was preparing to leave with her son, my girlfriend unexpectedly appeared. She burst through my front door, face flushed with anger, shouting about how I was blowing everything out of proportion. The sister stood protectively by her son, glaring. My girlfriend tried to yank her nephew over, calling him buddy like everything was normal. But the boy shrank back toward his mother. My girlfriend's rage then turned to me. She demanded I take back my call to child services, claiming it would ruin her reputation. "This was just a misunderstanding," she yelled. "You can tell them you overreacted." I crossed my arms, explaining I'd done exactly what was needed to protect a child who'd been left without consent. The sister stepped in, telling her, "You had no right to drop him off like that." My girlfriend rolled her eyes, claiming we were all making it a bigger deal than necessary. At that point, the sister calmly stated she'd be pressing charges if child services pursued the case. The tension was palpable. My girlfriend looked around like she couldn't believe we'd turned on her. She tried a final tactic, tears. She whined about the stress she'd been under, her need for a getaway, how she assumed I'd be cool with it. I shook my head. You never asked me. You never warned me. You just left a kid on my doorstep. She opened her mouth to argue, then realized we weren't budging. Eventually, the sister left with her son, promising to keep me updated. My girlfriend started packing her things from my house, ranting that I'd betrayed her. I watched silently as she stuffed her clothes into a duffel bag. Before storming out, she spat, "You'll regret this. You just cost me a relationship with my family." I answered quietly, "You did that to yourself." In the days that followed, I learned through the sister that child services had opened an inquiry. My girlfriend was questioned regarding her actions. The sister also consulted an attorney who suggested they could pursue charges for reckless endangerment if child services found sufficient grounds. I didn't relish the idea of seeing my now ex in legal trouble, but I recognized it was her own doing. If she'd simply apologized and come home to fix the mess, maybe things would be different. Meanwhile, I dealt with a barrage of messages from mutual friends, some taking her side, claiming I was a jerk for snitching. But many agreed that no child should be abandoned like that. I offered my side of the story calmly, showing screenshots of her dismissive texts. Most people who saw the evidence understood why I ended the relationship so abruptly. I won't lie, there was an emotional toll. Part of me remembered the good times we'd shared. But any nostalgia paled in comparison to the rage and disbelief I felt when she dropped a kid on my doorstep so she could go party. To me, that was a deal breaker, revealing an alarming lack of empathy. The sister eventually updated me. Child services recommended mandatory counseling for my ex, especially if she wanted to maintain any relationship with her nephew. She also had to explain herself in detail to their mother, who was livid. My ex tried to spin the story, but the text logs and that note she left with her nephew spoke for themselves. As for me, I feel relief. I'm no longer tangled in the web of someone who'd treat a vulnerable kid like a burden to be cast off. Sure, I'm single again, but that's a small price to pay for peace of mind. If there's one takeaway, it's that a person's true nature becomes glaringly obvious when responsibility enters the picture. Sometimes you see who they really are and realize you need to walk away. So that's what happened when my girlfriend abandoned her nephew on my doorstep without a heads up. I called her sister, called child services, and cut ties for good. It was painful, stressful, and left me shaken, but I stand by my decision. Nothing justifies leaving a child in the dark so you can sip cocktails by the beach. If that makes me the bad guy in her eyes, I'll gladly wear that label, knowing I did right by her nephew.